The storm had ended hours ago, but its memory lingered in the stifling stillness that had settled over the red waste. Dawn crept in slow and shrouded, painting the world in the color of blood and pearls, the windless air thick with promise and threat. The Dothraki slept in uneasy clusters beneath ragged tents and tattered cloaks, their horses restless, shifting their weight on sun-baked ground that had tasted too little rain. At the very edge of the encampment, where the sands ran red and gold, Daenerys Targaryen stood alone, wrapped in a cloak of woven silver, her hair unbound and tumbling like living flame down her back. Her mind was quiet, sharp as glass. She breathed in the morning and felt it move through her, a strange current, both electric and ancient. In her arms, the dragon eggs pulsed with impossible heat. 3. She had brought from the blackened pyre of Khal Drogo. But now there were 5. 2 had appeared on the night the red comet bled across the sky, their shells gleaming with the deep, shifting opalescence of Abalone, speckled with patterns that recalled the seashells her brother had once shown her in Bravos. She did not know how they had come to her, only that they belonged. They felt right in her arms, their heat familiar, thrumming in time with the pulse in her throat. The crone Miri Maz-Dur had spoken of blood and fire, and Daenerys had listened. She remembered every word, every curse, every plea. And now, at the edge of the world, she felt something waking inside her, something as old as Valyria's first fires, something her blood had always yearned to answer. She knelt in the sand and placed the eggs in a careful circle, 4 around 1, forming a star. The Dothraki whispered that she was mad, that her grief had made her witchkin. But they still followed her. Ser Jorah stood nearby, vigilant even in exhaustion, his sword loose at his hip, his gaze fixed not on her but on the horizon, as if he feared what might crawl from the empty wastes. The air itself seemed to gather, the wind curling and low and hungry, and Daenerys closed her eyes and listened. She remembered her brother's sneering voice, his threats and dreams, his talk of dragons dancing in the sky. He had not loved her. He had not understood. But she remembered her mother's songs, barely remembered melodies of home, of Valyria and wings that blotted out the sun, of a city so bright it hurt the eyes to look upon. She touched each egg in turn, murmuring names she did not know she remembered. Rhaegal, Viserion, Drogon, Sereth, Nissaros, the last 2 she had named in her dreams. Sereth for the lost river of Valyria, Nissaros for the mountain shrouded in blue flame. The sands shifted, the heat building around her. Her skin prickled, sweat beading along her brow, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the raw force gathering in her chest. She drew a knife from her belt and pressed the blade to her palm, watching as red welled bright and living. She let the blood fall upon each egg. The wind caught her hair, whirling it into a corona around her face. Blood of my blood, she whispered, voice cracking the silence. Fire made flesh wake. The dawn broke. Light poured over the sand, gilding the eggs, painting them in molten gold and bloody rose. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world shifted. She felt it before she saw it. A thunder deep in her bones, the taste of metal on her tongue. The eggs began to tremble, shivering with pent heat. The sand scorched beneath them. The air warped, folding in on itself, the world narrowing to 5 blazing points of light. A sound like the tearing of the earth itself. Then cracks raced across the eggs, light spilling from within, too bright to look at. Daenerys blinked tears from her eyes, but did not look away. The first shell burst open, shards tumbling away, and Drogon unfurled, black and crimson, his wings slick with birth fluid, his eyes already burning like embers. Rhaegal followed, green and bronze, his cry thin and hungry, Viserion, pale gold and cream, his scales catching the rising sun. Sereth egg split next, a creature of shimmering silver, marked with streaks of blue like the dawn, his cry ringing high and wild. Nissaros came last, her scales the color of dark sapphire, her eyes cold and clear. They crawled toward her, 5 newborn gods, hissing and blinking. Daenerys wept then, not for sorrow, but for awe, for joy that felt so sharp it could kill. She gathered them to her, one by one, her arms trembling under their surprising weight. Their heat was terrible, consuming, but she did not flinch. She pressed them to her breast and whispered to each, promising them blood and sky, promising vengeance and home. When she rose, the Dothraki had gathered, drawn by the noise and the scent of fire and new life. They stared in terror and awe as the dragons unfurled their wings, hissing, spitting tiny jets of flame that licked the sand to glass. Ser Jorah dropped to one knee. "Blood of the dragon," he said. And for the first time, there was real reverence in his voice. She turned to them all, the 5 dragons writhing about her feet, and felt the eyes of the world upon her, the dead, the living, all the long-lost blood of old Valyria. She lifted her chin, the wind snapping her cloak about her shoulders. "Khaleesi," Jorah whispered, his eyes shining. "Mother of dragons." She shook her head. "No," she said, her voice ringing out across the dawn. "Mother of empire." Words spread with the sun's first light, racing like wildfire. In the red waste, no one could hide from the sky. The Dothraki stared at their silver queen and her 5 children, and wondered what doom had been loosed upon the world. That day, Daenerys called a council. The Blood Riders came, and Irri and Jikwi, and Rakaro, though his face was pale with fear. Even the old crone, the Dosh Khaleen, sent to watch her, shuffled close, squinting through cataract-bleared eyes. She did not sit. She stood before them, the 5 dragons arrayed about her, their scales gleaming, their wings still soft, eyes bright as burning coals. They watched her with the patience of newborn predators. "My children are the first in centuries," she said, "but they will not be the last." The Dothraki shifted, uncertain. Jorah said nothing, but she saw hope, fear, in his eyes. She lifted her hand, blood still streaked across her palm. "We are not bound for Vaes Dothrak," she said, her voice hard as steel. "We ride east. We ride to the Shadowlands, to the bones of old Valyria. There, I will claim what is mine by blood and fire." Murmurs swept the circle. Valyria, cursed, haunted, a land of demons and smoke. None went there, not even the bravest Dothraki. It was said that to set foot on those shores was to forfeit your soul. But Daenerys felt only a strange serenity. The dragons shifted around her, their gazes steady. Drogon curled his tail around her ankle, the heat of him searing through her boot. Jorah stepped forward. "Khaleesi, the lands beyond are death. Valyria is lost." "Not lost," she interrupted, voice cool and terrible. "Dormant, waiting. For me, for my blood, for these." She gestured to the dragons, their wings unfolding like banners in the wind. "There are secrets there, magic older than the world. Weapons perhaps to make the world kneel. We will not find safety running from city to city, begging for shelter. I will make my own kingdom in the shadow of my ancestors' glory." No one spoke. The silence deepened, broken only by the crackle of the morning fire, the uneasy shuffling of horses. "Any who wish to leave may go," she said quietly. "But those who ride with me will see wonders undreamed of." The crone bowed her head. "Valyria is cursed," she croaked. "Only death and ruin remain." Daenerys looked at her, unblinking. "Then I will be the death of ruin." They rode at dusk, the dragons flying low above the sands, their bodies trailing shadows like banners. The Dothraki were uneasy, but hunger and wonder drove them onward. Daenerys rode at the head, silver hair flying, the wind in her face, and the taste of ash on her tongue. The dragons grew stronger by the hour, eating roasted meat, snapping bones with gleaming teeth. They wrestled and shrieked and spat jets of fire, and the camp kept a respectful distance. On the second night, Sereth's flame turned the sand to a pane of glass, smooth and smoky, and the Dothraki children stared wide-eyed at their queen's children, whispering old words in trembling voices. On the third, Nysaros curled around Daenerys as she slept. her scales cool as moonlit water. They traveled for weeks, following the course of the comet. The land grew strange, the air thick with secrets. The cities they passed, small, frightened, clutching their riches, opened their gates only when they saw the dragons. Some offered gold, some tribute, some begged for the queen's favor. Daenerys took what she needed and moved on. She was not here to rule the sand and dust. It was in the ruins of Valyria, a city drowned long ago by the wrath of gods or men, that she saw her first true vision. Night had fallen. The stars burned blue above the shattered columns, and the dragons coiled together in uneasy sleep, their bellies full of goat and stag. Daenerys wandered through the ruins, feeling the stones beneath her feet, hearing the wind keening through the bones of the world. She felt eyes upon her, ancient and cold. The ghosts of Valyria, she thought. Watching, waiting. She knelt beside a broken wall, its face carved with sigils she half remembered from her childhood. She pressed her hand to the stone, and the world shifted. She was no longer in Illyria. She was in the heart of Valyria, in the shadow of the 14 flames. The air was thick with smoke and song, the city alive with firelight and the roar of dragons. She saw herself, older, crowned in bronze and gold, 5 dragons swirling above her head. Armies knelt at her feet. The city blazed, and a great river of molten gold ran through its heart. Then the vision changed. She saw the doom, a tide of fire and shadow, devouring towers, shattering the sky. She saw 5 dragons rising from the flames, their wings beating back the darkness. She saw herself at their head, sword in hand, the world bowing. She gasped, tearing herself free from the stone's cold grip, and fell to her knees. When she looked up, Sereth was there, watching her with ancient, sapphire eyes. "It is time," she whispered. The next morning, she told Jorah of her vision. He listened, wary, but did not argue. "You mean to restore Valyria?" he said, voice low. She nodded. "Not as it was, as it should be. A new empire, one that does not kneel to old ghosts, one ruled by dragon and fire and will." He hesitated. "The free cities will not allow it, nor will Westeros, nor any who fear the return of your blood." She smiled, cold as dawn. "Then let them fear. I will give them reason." They crossed the smoking sea. The sky darkened, clouds churning with sulfur, the water running thick and red as blood. The dragons soared ahead, uncowed by the stench of old death, their cries echoing across the waves. Valyria rose from the mist, ruined, yes, but alive with secrets. Towers half fallen, streets choked with ash, yet beneath it all, a pulse, a promise, as if the city herself waited to be reborn. They made landfall on a beach of black sand, the dragons circling, screaming their triumph. The Dothraki shivered, clutching their weapons, muttering prayers to the dead. Daenerys stood upon the ash and knew she had come home. The city called to her, every stone, every shadow. She walked its streets with her dragons at her heels, Ser Jorah and a handful of her bravest riders behind. The air was thick with power, a living thing that pressed against her skin. They found the bones of old dragons, white and vast, littering the squares like broken ships. They found towers scorched black, halls filled with dust and sorrow. In the great palace at the city's heart, Daenerys paused. The doors hung open, their carvings still bright beneath 1,000 years of ash. She entered, the dragons following, their claws clicking on marble, their bodies weaving in and out of the shadows. She climbed the steps to the throne, tall and strange, made not of swords but of glass and gold, its back twisted in the shape of wings. She sat, and the dragons gathered at her feet, their eyes bright as new stars. "This is mine," she whispered, the words echoing in the silence. "By blood and by fire I claim it. I am Daenerys Stormborn, of the blood of old Valyria, and I will make this city great again. I will forge an empire that will never fall." The wind howled through the broken palace, but Daenerys sat unmoved, her dragons coiled around her like living flame. Outside, the Dothraki waited, uncertain and afraid. But inside, the fires of Valyria woke anew. She dreamed that night of wings and crowns, of cities bowing before her, of 5 dragons wheeling across a sky bright with hope and terror. In the morning, she would begin. But for now, she sat alone in the palace of her ancestors, her 5 dragons breathing softly at her feet, and listened to the heartbeat of a city waiting for its queen. Okay. The palace was no longer empty. Dawn crept through broken windows, laying cold light upon dust-choked mosaics, and the air moved with the low, restless breathing of 5 dragons curled around their mother's throne. Daenerys slept on the glass and gold seat, chin slumped to her chest, silver hair tangled about her face, fingers clenched so tightly about the armrest that her knuckles had gone bloodless white. Her dreams were thick and labyrinthine. Walls of fire, streets of molten stone, an empire rebuilt in her image and that of her ancestors. But outside the crumbled towers and shattered domes, the red waste was giving way to something older and more terrible. Dawn revealed it with a careful, fearful hand. The city of Valyria, whose name could still make the free cities tremble, and whose ruins were said to gnaw the souls of those who dared approach. Now there was a human camp on the black sand, a score of Dothraki tents huddled together against the howling winds, and at its heart stood Ser Jorah Mormont, sleepless and wary, one hand always close to the hilt of his sword. He watched the city with hooded eyes, trying to measure the shape of this new world, trying to imagine how a few hundred exiled horsemen, and a girl with dragons, could hope to thrive in a place that had devoured armies, kings, dreams. Each hour brought new omens. The wind carried whispers that sounded almost like words, and shadows moved along broken streets in ways no living thing could imitate. Sometimes Jorah thought he saw faces in the clouds of ash that rolled out of the city at night. But his greatest worry was not for himself, nor even for the Dothraki, whose loyalty was as thin as morning dew. It was for Daenerys, alone in the city's heart, the dragons her only shield, staking her soul against the ghosts of 1,000 years. On the morning of the second day, she returned to the camp with the 5 dragons trailing behind her, their bellies low to the ground, wings trailing through volcanic dust. The largest, Drogon, had already outgrown his siblings. He moved like a predator, his crimson-black scales glimmering, his eyes full of stormlight. The Dothraki shrank from their path, and not even Rakaro dared meet Daenerys' gaze. She came to stand beside Ser Jorah, brushing dust from her sleeves, her eyes wild with sleepless fire. "The city's heart is waking," she said in the tongue of the free cities. "I feel it, Jorah. It's more than ruins. There's magic buried here, old magic, older than the world." He did not ask her how she knew. He had seen the way the dragons responded to her voice, how the shadows in the city recoiled when she entered certain halls. "We cannot stay here forever, Khaleesi," he said softly. "Supplies run thin. The men are frightened. They will follow me, or they will perish." There was no anger in her words, only certainty. "I have seen our future in the flames. I am not just the mother of dragons. I am Valyria reborn." His eyes clouded with worry. "What will you do? Raise an empire from the ashes?" She turned and called the camp to gather. They came, out of awe, out of fear, out of the curiosity that lingers when the impossible becomes flesh. Blood riders stood with hands resting lightly on their arcs. Irri and Jikwi hovered, their faces a mask of loyalty and dread. Even the old crone from V's Dothrak came, her bones rattling with each step. Daenerys spoke to them all. She told them of Valyria, of her dream. No, her purpose. A city reborn not just for the blood of dragons, but for all those cast aside by the old powers. She would forge a new Khalasar, one not bound by Dothraki law or Westerosi pride. All who knelt would be kin, all who rose against her would be broken. The words rang in the thin air, echoing against blackened stone and lifeless towers. The Dothraki did not cheer, but neither did they scatter. They had seen the dragons spit fire. They had seen Daenerys walk where none dared walk and return untouched. In the days that followed, work began. Tents rose, then crude shelters. The bravest explored the ruined wharves for fish. For salvage, the dragons hunted, bringing back the charred carcasses of wild goats and strange sinewy creatures that hid among the lava rocks. Daenerys ranged further and further through the city, her children at her heels, exploring every hollow and broken court. She found treasures. In the shattered temple of Balerion, beneath a mosaic of gods burning in volcanic fire, she unearthed a cache of books, their pages charred but legible, written in tongues she half remembered from childhood lullabies. She spent nights reading by dragonfire, tracing the history of her house, the spells and secrets of dragonbond and flame. It was on the 9th day that the first stranger arrived. They came at dawn, on a battered skiff out of the smoking sea, their faces covered in veils and scarves. Ser Jorah's hand went to his sword, but Daenerys waved him aside. The strangers bowed, and in the halting Valyrian of the east, begged audience. "We heard the fires," the woman said, peeling back her veil to reveal eyes that glimmered with the color of old coins, "and saw the dragons." Word spreads quickly in the free cities. The Triarchs of Volantis send spies. Lys and Myr do likewise. Some will come as enemies, others as supplicants. Daenerys did not flinch. "What are you?" "Seekers," the woman answered. "Remnants of old blood. We have waited for the dragon's return. There are others, hidden in Lys and Volantis, waiting for the call." Daenerys' heart leapt, but she did not show it. "What do you want?" "To serve." The answer came quick and low, a whisper caught on the morning wind. "To see Valyria rise, to see the world remade." She let them stay for now, and soon others came. Fishermen from Illyria, escaped slaves from Astapor and Yunkai, exiles from Pentos and Lys. All spoke of the dragons, the fire that now shone from the city's heart like a beacon. And so the beginnings of her empire took shape, a gathering of cast-offs and exiles, the broken, the desperate and the bold. Some came for sanctuary, some for vengeance, some only for the chance to witness the birth of legend. Daenerys gave them food when she could, shelter where it was safe, and always hope. Never cheap, never easy, but fierce and burning. The kind that left scars. The dragons grew. Drogon soared above the city, his wings casting shadows that stretched from the sea to the horizon. Rhaegal and Viserion ranged further each day. Sereth and Nysaros hunted together, their cries echoing through the stone halls. The Dothraki grew accustomed to the new order, their children following the dragons as if they were dogs. But there were dangers too. On the 3rd week, one of the new arrivals, a Pentoshi thief with a mouth full of gold teeth, tried to steal a dragon egg from the hatchery Daenerys had fashioned in the palace vaults. He was found the next morning, burned to ash, his bones fused to the glassy stone. "Let all see," Daenerys ordered. "My children are not to be trifled with. Their hunger is as boundless as my will." Her justice was hard, but it was fair. More exiles arrived, drawn by stories carried on the wings of her dragons and the lips of those who braved the smoking sea. Even those who came in secret, spies and would-be assassins, fell to the watchful eyes of her blood riders or the fire of her children. The city began to change. Where once there was only ruin, now fires burned at night, voices sang in the market squares, and trade returned to the old harbors. The Dothraki learned to fish and to build. The exiles built a small fleet from the bones of shattered ships. Daenerys sent her swiftest riders east and west, bearing messages of hope and warning. "Tell them," she said, "that the blood of Valyria runs hot again. Tell them that Daenerys Stormborn rules, where no man dares tread." Winter crept upon the world, cold and patient, but in Valyria, the air was warm. The dragons brought heat wherever they settled. The black sands were alive with green shoots, the old gardens waking from centuries of sleep. Each night, Daenerys walked the palace walls, her mind full of plans, her heart full of steel. On the 49th day, her fleet returned from Volantis bearing envoys. men in fine silk and heavy chains of office, their eyes shrewd, their words oily with flattery and threat. "You claim what is not yours," said the envoy of the Triarchs, standing in the throne room beneath the glass wings. "Valyria is forbidden. Let the dead rest, mother of dragons. There is still peace to be made." Daenerys did not smile. "There will be peace," she said, "when the world kneels, not before." The envoy tried to threaten. He spoke of fleets and armies, of the long reach of Volantis, the greed of Cahor and Lys, the gold of the Iron Bank. Daenerys listened, her 5 dragons silent around her, watching with eyes that saw all. "Send your ships," she said at last. "Let the world see how little your gold and steel matter against fire and blood." The envoy went pale, but did not argue. He left the palace with quick steps, his guards glancing fearfully over their shoulders. The world did not wait. Within days, Volantene ships appeared on the horizon, black sails snapping in the wind, warriors gleaming in bronze. The Dothraki drew their arcs, the exiles their bows. But Daenerys did not call them to arms. She stood atop the highest tower, wind whipping her hair, and let Drogon carry her into the sky. The first ships burned before they came within a mile of the city. Rhaegal and Viserion dove from the clouds, shrieking, flame turning water to steam, bronze to slag. The Volantines broke and scattered, and those who did not drown were left afloat in the ash-black water. Begging for mercy, Daenerys gave them none. Her message was clear. Valyria belonged to the dragons and to their queen. In the wake of the battle, the city was awash in awe and terror. Exiles flocked to her banner in droves, whispering of her power. But Daenerys knew that power alone could not build an empire. She needed laws, trade, justice, order to match her fire. She called a council, not just her blood riders, but envoys from the exiles, the fisherfolk, the traders, the brave and the cunning. She listened as they argued, as they pleaded for this right or that tradition. Some wanted to return to the old Valyria, others to erase it entirely. She struck a balance. "We will keep what is worth keeping. The rest we will burn away." She established laws. No slave would live in her city. All who wished to serve could do so, but none would be owned. The old blood had its place, but so did new blood. The strong, the clever, the loyal. She rebuilt the city's aqueducts, drew on the skills of exiles and freedmen, to plant fields in the ash, to repair harbors, to reopen forges. She sent envoys to Astapor, to Yunkai, to Meereen, promising alliance and threatening fire. Some listened, others sent assassins. Each attempt failed. The dragons made sure of that. It was at this time that a young girl, not yet 10, appeared at her gate. Her hair was black as pitch, her eyes bright with a cunning that belied her years. She spoke in High Valyrian, flawless and sharp. "My father was a magister of Lys," she said. "He was slain by his rivals. I have nowhere else to go. Let me serve you, Mother of Dragons. I know things, secrets of the old blood, spells and sigils, ways to wake stone and bend steel." Daenerys studied her, saw the hunger and the will in her eyes, and welcomed her to the palace. She named the girl Nyra, and set her to work alongside the learned and the wise, scouring the old tomes, unraveling the mysteries of dragonkind. Nyra proved her worth swiftly. Within weeks, she had learned the language of the dragons, taught herself to read runes no one living could decipher, and devised a way to make dragonflame burn twice as hot. She became Daenerys' shadow, and soon her confidante. "My queen," she said one night, when the city slept and the dragons coiled together in the firelit halls. "There are more secrets in these stones. I have read of vaults beneath the city, where the first dragon lords kept their greatest treasures. Steel that cannot break, glass that will not shatter, maps of lands yet unknown." Daenerys' eyes gleamed. "Show me." They descended together, Nyra carrying a torch, Daenerys trailed by Drogon and Sereth. The vaults beneath Valyria were vast, choked with smoke and ash, filled with relics of a world that had burned but not died. They found weapons forged in dragonfire, swords that gleamed with blue light, armor that shifted with the color of the sea. They found scrolls written in blood, spells that made Daenerys' heart race with dread and longing. She took them all, and when she returned to the throne room, she called her council. "Valyria is not just a city," she said. "It is a power, an idea, one that can never be destroyed, not while dragons live, not while their queen remains." She gave swords to her bravest captains, armor to her blood riders, scrolls to her scholars. She forged a host, not just of soldiers, but of builders, healers, dreamers. Her fleet grew. Trade flourished. Gold flowed into the city, and with it came spies and enemies, but none could stand against her children. Years passed, and Valyria rose anew. Where there had been only silence and ash, now there was music, laughter, hope. The free cities grew jealous, then fearful. Westeros stirred uneasily, its lords whispering of a new conquest, a new doom. But Daenerys did not rush to war. She was patient, and she was wise. She waited, letting her power grow, letting the world come to her. Her 5 dragons grew huge, their wings blotting out the sun, their cries shaking the world. They mated, and soon there were eggs again. New dragons to guard the city, new fire to forge its destiny. In time, Daenerys became more than queen. She became legend. They sang songs of her in the markets of Korth, in the palaces of Lys, in the fields of the Reach. Mothers named their children for her dragons. Kings dreamed uneasy dreams of fire on the horizon. But still, she remembered the promise she had made on that first dawn. To restore not just a city, but an empire. To make a world that would never kneel again. So she waited, and she watched, and she planned. Her heart as bright and terrible as the flames that had birthed her, her 5 dragons her only crown. Kate. The new Valyria grew, but not without pain. In the shadowed spaces between ruined towers and the rising palisades of the restored city, memory clashed with hunger and ambition. Daenerys walked these streets daily, her steps echoing on black glass and ancient stone, always with a dragon at her heels. Some days Drogon stalked her path, wings rustling as if they could not be contained. Other days it was Sereth, his scales reflecting the blue fire that haunted her dreams. The city's rebirth was slow and difficult. The Dothraki chafed under new order, their pride stung by the endless labor and the strange magic crackling through the ruins. They had been raiders, riders, masters of the open plain. Here, the city forced them to be builders. Daenerys listened to their complaints, their grumbling over stone and mortar, but she did not relent. Instead, she sent Ricardo and Ago to oversee the first forges, and had the old crone from Vaes Dothrak teach the women the art of weaving with glass threads and volcanic flax. Trade grew as the fires of Valyria became a signal to the world. Ships came more often now, hugging the smoking sea's perilous edges, their captains drawn by rumor and the promise of a queen with dragons. A handful of brave traders from Volantis and Cahor brought salt fish, steel, bolts of wool dyed red as blood. Daenerys paid in gems pride from ruined manses and in dragonfire for those who tried to cheat her. Word spread, as it always did, that in Valyria, a new order was rising, a queen of fire and 5 living gods. The old blood, scattered across the free cities, remembered ancient ties. Small bands of magisters, those with even a drop of Valyrian ancestry, risked the sea to pledge their loyalty. They came in secret, bringing books and relics, and Daenerys welcomed them with both caution and hope. Yet not all were so eager to kneel. Across the narrow sea, the Iron Bank of Braavos sent a cold missive, warning that debts incurred by previous rulers would not be forgiven. The Triarchs of Volantis offered alliance laced with demands, an exclusive right to the Smoking Sea's ports, the return of Valyrian steel long lost in the Doom, tribute in the form of dragon scales and eggs. Daenerys refused all but the most basic trade pacts, and sent back a single warning: Valyria bows to no throne but her own. Not all messages came on ink and parchment. One dawn, as the city worked to repair its broken aqueducts, A column of fire erupted on the western shore. By the time Daenerys arrived, mounted on Nissaros, the flames had died, leaving only a charred boat and 2 bodies fused to the black sand. In their hands was a bronze disc etched with the mark of the faceless men. She stood by the smoking wreck, hair whipping in the sulfur wind, while her dragon circled overhead. For a moment, Daenerys felt a sliver of old fear pierce her resolve, but it vanished as quickly as it had come. She ordered the bodies buried beneath the foundations of the new city wall, a silent warning to those who would come by stealth. Valyria became a crucible, testing, forging, breaking. Each week brought new faces, new tongues, new alliances to weigh and threats to weigh more carefully still. The council grew, a motley collection of Dothraki bloodriders, freedmen from Astapor, old Volantine magisters, Lyseni merchant princes, and the sharp-witted Nira, who never left Daenerys' side. Each day they debated law and trade, borders and tribute, and each night Daenerys found herself drawn to the dragon hatchery, deep beneath the palace. The hatchery was her sanctuary. The 5 firstborn dragons prowled its shadows, their scales glimmering in the firelight. Dozens of eggs rested in shallow pits of volcanic glass and hot sand, their surfaces flickering with color and heat. Sometimes Daenerys would sit among them, listening to the faint cracking of shells, the slow heartbeat of new life. It was there that she first noticed the change. Drogon's eyes had always been wild, but now they seemed deeper, wiser. He watched her with the patience of the ages, and his flame had grown hotter, capable of melting stone, of forging new metal from the ruins of the old city. Sereth and Nissaros grew closer, often circling the palace together in the dusk. Rhaegal and Viserion roamed further afield, driving off wild wyverns and hunting the great firebulls that grazed the fertile plain beyond the walls. As the dragons matured, their magic saturated the city. Fruit trees took root in ash. Fountains flowed where there had only been cracked cisterns. The air, once choked with dust and poison, grew fragrant with strange flowers and the sharp tang of the sea. Sometimes, in the half-light, Daenerys glimpsed shadows moving through the streets, memories of the old empire, or something more. She did not speak of these things to the council, but she kept Nyra close, and the girl grew wise in the ways of magic and statecraft alike. Together, they read from the ancient scrolls, learning the names of the spells once used to bend stone, shape glass, heal wounds too grave for any maester's salve. There were secrets here, dangerous ones, and Daenerys would not let them fall into careless hands. It was during one such night, after weeks of toil, when the city's walls rose higher and the harbor bustled with new ships, that Daenerys dreamed again of the doom. She saw herself, crowned and robed in flame, standing atop a tower of glass and steel. 5 dragons soared above, their wings blotting out the stars. Below, armies marched, unsullied, Dothraki, men and women from every corner of the world, all bearing her sigil. Then came the darkness. She saw the free cities rise in rage and terror, saw fleets converging on Valyria's coast, saw an army of golden lions and silver stags unfurling banners in the narrow straits. She saw the great houses of Westeros assembling, their faces obscured by mist and shadow. The dragons shrieked. The sky was torn by fire. She woke gasping, the taste of blood and ash in her mouth. The next morning, Daenerys called the council together in the palace's new audience hall. A space of carved stone, sunlight falling through sheets of colored glass. The counselors arrived in haste, some bleary from sleep, others pale with apprehension. "We are strong," Daenerys said, "but we are not unassailable. The world will come for us, not only the free cities but Westeros as well. We must be ready." Jorah, grizzled now and marked with scars, nodded. "The old families still fear dragons," Khaleesi taught. "Their spies are everywhere. Then let them see what we are building." She stood tall, her gaze sweeping the gathered faces. "Valyria must not hide. Our strength is in our unity, our openness. We trade with those who wish peace, but we answer fire with fire, and I will not be content with walls and ships. If the world seeks to destroy us, we will show them why Valyria was feared." There was silence, broken only by the flutter of wings as Nissaros glided in through an open arch, settling at Daenerys' feet. The council understood. This was not merely a city, but the spark of something greater. They set about their tasks with renewed urgency. Rakaro drilled the Dothraki in new forms of warfare, fighting not only on horseback, but as infantry, as archers on the walls, as marines on Valyria's growing fleet. The freedmen trained in arms and discipline, forming the core of what Daenerys called the New Legions, an echo of the old empire, but forged in her vision. Nyra and the Magisters pored over ancient texts, deciphering lost methods of forging Valyrian steel and constructing siege engines. The blacksmiths, under their guidance, learned to weave dragon glass into arrowheads and spear tips, to reinforce doors and shields, to craft jewelry and ornament to send as gifts, or warnings, to distant courts. The city's defenses grew. Watchtowers rose along the coast, their beacons manned day and night. The dragons patrolled the sky, their presence a living deterrent to pirates and spies alike. The harbor swelled with new ships, swift outriders, sleek war galleys, merchant cogs bearing goods to and from the free cities, even to distant Korth and Yaiti. But even as Valyria flourished, the world darkened. In Braavos, the Iron Bank called in old debts and sent emissaries to the other free cities. In Lys, the Magisters plotted, seeking to sow discord among the exiles now loyal to Daenerys. In Westeros, word of her power and her dragons reached the Great Council at King's Landing. Spies came disguised as merchants and priests. Not all of them returned. One afternoon, as Daenerys walked the high walls with Drogon circling above, a messenger arrived from the north, a battered Lyseni merchant, bearing a letter sealed with golden wax. He knelt before her, trembling. "My queen, a message from King's Landing. The boy King Tommen Baratheon offers parley. He asks you to send an ambassador, that you may discuss peace and the future of Westeros." Daenerys took the letter and broke the seal. The words within were courteous, almost pleading, promising trade and alliance if only Valyria would forsake any claim to the Iron Throne. She burned the letter with a touch of Drogon's breath. They still think to bargain. She said to Jorah, who stood close by. "Us if I am some lesser queen, a beggar at their gates." "They do not understand," Jorah replied. "Not yet, but they will." In the weeks that followed, Daenerys increased her efforts to strengthen the city. She sent Rhaegal and Viserion on patrols to the far edges of the Smoking Sea, seeking signs of enemy fleets. She ordered the new legions to drill day and night. She called upon the wise women and the old blood to devise new spells for healing, for scrying, for sending messages through fire and wind. Nyra made her greatest discovery during these restless days. She brought Daenerys to a hidden chamber beneath the palace, its walls covered in runes that pulsed with faint blue light. "There are spells here," Nyra whispered, "to call storms, to guide ships safely, to make the walls of the city as strong as the mountains. But they require more than words. They require the blood of dragons." Daenerys nodded, unafraid. "If sacrifice is needed, it will be mine." Nyra shook her head. "It is not so simple. The city itself must become your heart. Your will must bind it. The dragons will help, but so must your people. If they love you, if they fear you, if they believe, the spell will hold." So Daenerys summoned the city's people. In the square before the palace, as evening fell, she stood with her 5 dragons, her voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "I was born of fire," she called, "and the city was born in fire. Together, we shall forge a bond that no army can break. Valyria's walls will be as strong as our will, as fierce as our love. Thou." She cut her palm with a blade of dragon glass and let the blood fall upon the stones. One by one, her dragons roared, their flames licking the sky. The people cried out, some in terror, some in awe. But as the spell took hold, the walls of Valyria glimmered with new life, veins of blue fire running through black stone, a heartbeat that echoed in every chest. That night, for the first time since the doom, Valyria shone, visible for leagues across the smoking sea, a beacon to all the world. It was a warning and a promise. Enemies gathered still. The free cities conspired. Westeros plotted. But Daenerys sat upon her throne, surrounded by the children of flame, and smiled. She knew the world would come. She knew her empire would be tested by fire and blood, by treachery and war. But Valyria was hers, and she was Valyria. Whatever storm came next, she would meet it not as a beggar, but as an empress. The last dragon sang as dawn broke, a song older than grief, a song of birth and power, a song to shake the world. And Daenerys at last was ready. Okay. Beneath the blood-bright sky, Valyria's towers burned with living fire. The veins of blue and red light that Daenerys and her people had drawn through the city's bones throbbed now with a ceaseless pulse, feeding the land and warning the world. Where the walls had once been glass-black and silent, they glowed each dusk with threads of heat, casting the silhouettes of dragons in flight upon the waves. Valyria was a city awake, a city at the edge of history's rebirth. And Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of storm and flame, walked its walls in the deep hours when others slept, her mind full of futures. At her side came Sereth, blue and silver scales catching the pulse of the city's new light. The dragon's eyes followed every movement in the shadows. His tail swayed, stirring dust from the mosaic floor. In the distance, the other 4 dragons patrolled the sky, or curled atop the palace's broken domes, their roars echoing over the sea like the roll of thunder. Every so often, a flicker of flame or a shriek would break the stillness, and Daenerys' lips would curve in the dark. Her children had become legends before the world could quite believe they were real. She paused atop the highest wall, gaze sweeping from the river delta, where the new forges smoked to the glass towers beyond the city's heart, where the magisters of the old blood worked alongside Lyseni engineers, weaving spell and steel together. The city below was not yet whole, not yet free of fear, but it had changed beyond all reckoning. Green shoots climbed from ashen cracks, fountains ran with clean water, and laughter drifted in the streets even after midnight. But the smoke of distant fires marred the horizon. Daenerys watched the signals rise, torch flashes, smoke columns, the silent semaphore of war. Her spies in Volantis and Lys sent word by swift ships and by secret magic. The free cities would move soon, before the new Valyria could draw in more of their lost and wandering. They would strike together, not with armies alone, but with sorcery, assassins, gold and rumor. Across the narrow sea, Westeros gathered its own storms, lords debating war in the Red Keep, envoys riding out from Old Town and White Harbor, a king's council restless as the tides. Daenerys did not fear. Her heart, once so easily broken, now beat with the certainty of a builder and a conqueror both. She had remade Valyria from ruin, woven her will into its walls, watched her 5 dragons multiply and her city grow fat on the trade of the world. Yet she had not forgotten the cost. Each sunrise brought new burdens, new loss. A night's fire out of control that killed 2 of her bravest freedmen. A fever from the east that took 5 children before her healers could turn it. A traitor found hanged by his fellows in the market square. She mourned, but she did not falter. She summoned her council daily in the vast new hall, where glass columns gleamed, and the councilors' voices bounced beneath soaring arches. Jorah was grayer now, beard streaked with white, but his voice remained steady as ever. Nyra had grown tall and spare, quick-eyed, dressed in simple blue, her tongue sharp as a blade and her mind sharper still. Rakara wore a cloak of dragon scale, leading the new legions with the pride of a true blood rider. Around them sat magisters from the free cities, captains from her swelling fleet, Dothraki chiefs and freedmen's delegates, each one sworn to Valyria by oath and ambition alike. In these councils, Daenerys ruled with a gentle hand and an iron will. She asked questions that made the old magisters sweat and forced the Dothraki to speak their grievances aloud, teaching them to shape anger into law. She debated tariffs and grain with the Lyseni, trade routes with Qohorik and Qartheen, the price of peace with wary Volantinese. Sometimes when her dragons prowled the eaves and the firelight flashed on glass, even her counselors felt uneasy, as if the stones themselves listened and judged. It was Neira who first brought word of the secret gathering at Illyria, the drowned city where ruins met the sea. Daenerys called for her at midnight, and the girl came without fear, rolling ancient scrolls across the queen's table. "They come to plot your ruin, my queen," Neira said, voice pitched low so even the wind could not steal her secrets. "Triarchs from Volantis, merchant princes of Lys and Tyrosh, old Bravosi with eyes like knives. They promise gold for your head, for the city's destruction. They say the dragons are the spawn of a new doom." Daenerys listened, hands clasped in her lap. "They fear what they cannot master. They always have." She glanced at the city map. Neira had drawn in light and ink, arrows tracing likely invasion routes, circles for hidden caches of powder and spell. How many would come? At least 1,000 sellswords, 50 ships, 10 warlocks from Korth, and some from the Black Pearls line. More if they can bribe the Iron Bank to close your credit. "Let them come," Daenerys said, calm as the night. "Valyria will show the world what true power is. We will not kneel, not for gold, not for magic, not for threats. The city is stronger than their worst dreams." She sent messages that same night, swift horses to the forges, commands to the captains of her fleet, secret words to her spies in Lys and Myr. She ordered the new legions to ready the walls, to string fresh catapults on every tower, and line the harbor with fire ships. Yora oversaw the defenses, never sleeping more than an hour at a time. Rakaro doubled the patrols, his best riders ranging deep into the Ashen Wilds, seeking signs of movement on the land. As preparations quickened, Daenerys took time each dawn to walk among her people. She greeted smiths at their forges, laughed with fisherwomen hauling nets from the bay, knelt with children in the temple gardens, her white braids glinting in the sun. She heard the rumors. Some feared a second doom. Others whispered she was Azor Ahai returned. Some spoke of the dragons in awed voices, as if they were gods come to judge the world. One morning, a delegation of freedmen came to her gates. A line of men and women once broken, now proud, clothed in bright sashes and carrying a banner Daenerys herself had never seen. On it was a dragon, red as blood, coiled around a rising sun. "We are yours, my queen," their leader said, bowing. "You gave us freedom, a place to live, and to hope. We are the children of fire. We will serve whatever comes." Daenerys smiled and called them into her hall. "Valyria will always be your home. There is no higher loyalty than hope restored." She appointed the boldest among them to her council, gave others command in the city watch, and saw that their new banner flew beside the Targaryen, three-headed dragon over every gate and market. The children of fire became her eyes and ears, loyal where others wavered, tireless in rooting out thieves and plotters, quick to defend the city when threats loomed. As the threat from Illyria drew nearer, Daenerys dreamed more fiercely, of war and flame, of cities falling, of herself atop a dragon, sword in hand, wings blotting out the sun. Sometimes she awoke in the dark, Sereth's blue eyes fixed upon her, as if the dragon shared her visions. At the turning of the year, the enemy fleet was sighted at last. 50 ships, black-sailed and bristling with ballistae and lanterns filled with wildfire. At their head sailed the flagship of Volantis, crimson hull gleaming, oars churning smoke into the sky. Yora stood with Daenerys atop the main harbor tower as the sun rose. "They come for your crown," he said, eyes on the distant sails. "For your life." Daenerys' cloak snapped in the morning wind, her hair streaming silver and white. "They come for their old world. I bring a new one. I will not hide. Let them see what Valyria is now." She summoned her dragons, 5 vast shapes that swept the sky, the wind of their wings raising a gale that churned the sea to white. At her word, Drogon dove first, a black arrow against the sun, flames spilling from his jaws. Rhaegal and Viserion followed, their roars shattering the dawn, fire boiling on the water. Sereth and Nisseros circled the harbor, blue and silver flame wreathing the city's walls. Daenerys watched as the fleet closed, ballistae loosed, firepots flung high. But the dragon's flame devoured everything it touched. Wood turned to steam and slag. Men fell screaming or leaped into the sea. Ships burned in green and gold. In the midst of it all, her own fleet surged out from the breakwater. Slender, fast. Hulls armored with glass and steel. Bows fitted with dragon fire throwers. The battle was over in less than an hour. The enemy's flagship turned, oars shattered, fire licking the deck, and vanished into the haze. The survivors clung to wreckage or swam for the distant shore. Not one enemy warrior set foot on Valyrian soil. When the smoke cleared, Daenerys descended to the docks, where the Children of Fire and new legions waited in silence. She raised her hand, and the dragons circled overhead, their shadows rippling over the crowd. "Let all the world see this day," Daenerys said, voice clear as a bell. "Valyria is not for the taking. I have given you life, freedom, and hope. You have given me loyalty and strength. Together we are unbreakable. Let any who would threaten us remember this dawn." The city rejoiced that night. Fires burned on every street, dancers twirled to pipes and drums, children played at being dragons in the gardens. Even the magisters, so often cautious, joined the celebration, their old fears swept away by the promise of victory. But Daenerys did not linger in the feasting halls. She climbed to the highest tower and stood alone with her dragons, her eyes drawn to the horizon where enemy ships had burned. She felt pride and a deep weariness. War was not done with them. The world would test her again and again. Yet for the first time since her brother had told her tales of dragons, she believed in her own legend. Not as a conqueror alone, not as a child of prophecy, but as a builder. One who could turn ruin to hope, fear to loyalty, magic to law. In the weeks that followed, emissaries arrived from Korth, from Meereen, even from Bravo Stari. Some came to bargain, others to warn, a few to beg for protection against the wrath of her enemies. Daenerys heard each, weighing their words and their worth. She sent ships to rescue survivors from the sea, healed wounds with spells and potions, promised trade and peace to those who would honor her laws. Her council grew still more diverse. Northern traders from Westeros joined with Astapori generals. Carthene merchants struck deals with Lyseni glassmakers. The city's harbors grew crowded with ships. Its markets overflowed with goods never before seen together in one place. All the while the dragons ranged farther, sowing awe and dread. At Daenerys' command, no fire was loosed on a city that paid its debts and honored its word. But in the wild places, pirates and slavers vanished, their strongholds burned to ash. The world began to understand the new order. In the hush after victory, Daenerys took time to visit the lowest quarters of the city. There she found old slaves teaching children to read, Dothraki learning to fish, Lyseni artisans drawing magic into glass. She saw hope, and she saw hunger, and she set her healers and counselors to work easing the city's pains. Her dragons walked among the people, gentle as cats when fed, fierce as storm when threatened. One day, as Daenerys rested in the shadowed peace of the old palace, Nyra brought her a new scroll, one written in the secret tongue of the Dragonlords, found deep in a sealed vault. "It is a prophecy, my queen," Nyra said, eyes shining. "It speaks of a time when the world will be united not by conquest, but by the fire of creation. It tells of 5 dragons, and the queen who commands them." Daenerys read the scroll in silence, heart beating faster with every line. At last, she looked up, the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders like a mantle of flame. "Then it is true," she whispered. "Not just to rule, but to unite. Not just by war, but by wonder. The world is not ready, but it will be. We are more than conquerors, Nyra. We are the beginning of the world anew." Nems. Night fell, and Daenerys stood once more atop the palace tower, her 5 dragons arrayed around her, their bodies glowing in the city's light. Below, Valyria shimmered with promise. A city reborn, an empire rising, a future waiting to be claimed. Daenerys spread her arms and her dragons took to the sky, carrying with them the dreams of all who called Valyria home. And the world, seeing their flight, trembled and hoped. Ah, hey. Beyond the walls, the world took notice. Ships bore word to every corner of Essos and across the narrow sea. Valyria stood again. The slavers of Astapor and Yunkai, once scornful, now sent envoys heavy with gifts. The Triarchs of Volantis, shamed by their failed assault, resorted to backroom plotting and bribes, fearful to face fire and dragon in the open. Even in Westeros, lords who once scoffed at the thought of dragons now sent their maesters scrambling for old maps and histories, desperate to recall what the world had been when Valyria last ruled the world. Yet inside the city, life did not wait for the old powers to catch up. Each day, Daenerys rose before the sun, her bare feet silent on the glass floors of her palace, her mind clear as the dawn. She watched her dragons at rest, Drogon coiled like a shadow around the pillars of the great hall. Sereth and Nysaros entwined above the main gate, their blue and silver scales dappling the walls with light, Rhaegal and Viserion ever in motion, leaping from tower to tower, wings stirring the dawn mist into whirls and spirals. She cherished these quiet moments, for they were fleeting. The city called to her, 100 voices at once. Grain shortages after a failed shipment from Kuhor, a merchant's dispute at the new harbor. A riot in the slums sparked by rumors of gold hidden beneath the ruined temples. At first, Daenerys addressed each matter herself, her presence silencing argument and soothing fears. But as the weeks passed, she taught her counselors to listen for her, to speak with her authority. They grew bolder, cleverer, less afraid. Someday soon, she knew, she would not be needed for every squabble. She was building not just an empire, but an idea. Sometimes, in the hush of evening, she wondered if her ancestors had known this burden. If Aegon the Conqueror had knelt in secret, whispering his doubts to Balerion. If the dragon lords of old Valyria had yearned for quiet, even as they built wonders. She did not regret her power, but she never forgot its cost. The dragons thrived. In the gardens behind the palace, eggs hatched in the steaming sand. The first clutch, 7 in all, cracked one morning as Daenerys sang softly in High Valyrian, her voice trembling with wonder. The hatchlings were smaller than house cats, but fierce. One nipped at her finger and shrieked at Drogon, who regarded the tiny creature with what almost seemed amusement. By noon, word of the new dragons had swept through the city. People gathered to offer scraps of meat. Children pressed their faces to the gates of the gardens, and the elders whispered blessings and old prayers. No threat, not even distant war, could eclipse the wonder of that day. Daenerys let the children come to see the hatchlings, watched as their awe melted into laughter, and felt a warmth in her heart that no fire could burn away. But the city's joy was shadowed by signs of unrest in the world beyond. Spies brought news from Lys and Tyrosh. New alliances formed in secret, gold flowing into mercenary camps, warlocks and priests summoned to council. At night, Daenerys pored over reports with Nyra, Jorah, and Rakaro, marking each movement on a vast painted map. One evening, as she traced a line of red ink from Lys to the southern shore, Nyra touched her hand. "They fear you because you show them a new world, my queen. They do not hate you yet. But they will, if you press them too hard." Daenerys looked up, silver hair tangled in her fingers, and saw the truth of it. She had broken the old chains, not by conquest, but by creation. She had made something new. A city where freedmen ate beside Dothraki, where children spoke 4 tongues, where the cry of a dragon meant protection, not doom. But the world was not ready for such change. She made her decision that night. "We will not strike first," she said. "We will build. We will show them what peace looks like, what fire can create, not only destroy. If war comes, we will answer, but not with the old cruelty." So Valyria's walls rose higher, its streets grew broader, its temples rang with music and song. New canals carried water from the mountains. Aqueducts, restored with dragonfire and ancient spell, brought life to gardens where nothing had grown since the Doom. The palace doors stood open by day, and Daenerys walked the halls among her people, speaking not as a goddess, but as a queen who listened. Then came the first caravan from Westeros, a battered column of traders from Old Town, their wagons heavy with wool and fine glass, their eyes wide with terror and hope. They came by sea and by land, risking pirates, wild magic, and storms. Daenerys received them in the throne room. Cirith sprawled at her feet, his blue flame flickering lazily. The leader, a tall woman with hair the color of rusted iron, knelt and held out a velvet bag. Within it was a rod of black metal, worked with gold, a token of the citadel. "My queen," Old Town remembers. "We bring you knowledge, and ask only safe passage and honest trade." Daenerys nodded, took the rod and lifted the woman to her feet. "You have it. All knowledge is welcome in Valyria. Let your masters know that no maester need fear the dragons." Word spread quickly. In a month, a dozen new embassies opened. Merchants from Lannisport, lords from Dorne and the Reach, hedge knights and their sworn swords, all drawn by tales of wealth and wonder. Some came to spy, and Daenerys knew it, but she did not close her gates. She let them see the city, its peace, its order, the sight of children learning alongside hatchling dragons, the markets full of goods from every land. She saw the change in her people as well. Where suspicion had once ruled, now there was pride. Men and women from every part of the world, broken and lost, had found a home and a purpose. The children of fire kept order, not with cruelty, but with quiet firmness. The new legions drilled by day and patrolled by night, their discipline a thing of awe to the traitors who watched. In her council, debate grew sharper. Jorah urged caution with the Westerosi. They will never accept a queen with dragons so long as they remember Harrenhal. Nyra pushed for openness, reminding Daenerys that secrets had nearly destroyed the old Valyria. Rhaenyra wanted to ride out and raid, to show the Dothraki's strength. But always, Daenerys listened, weighed, and found the path between. One morning, as the sun crept over the city, and the bells called the council to order, Nysero swooped low over the square, a message clutched in her talons. Daenerys caught the scroll herself. The seal was Bravo C, a plain face in black wax. She broke it and read, "Queen of Fire, the Iron Bank offers terms. Debts may be paid in gold, dragon steel, or wisdom. Refuse, and war will come on silent feet. Accept, and your empire may endure." Daenerys smiled, amused by their arrogance. She dipped her pen and wrote a single line. "Valyria does not borrow. Valyria builds." She sent the scroll back, tied to Nyseroth's leg. "Let them come," she thought. "Let them see." But that same week, trouble came not from the Iron Bank, but from within. In the night, a fire broke out in the Forge District. 2 workshops burned to ash, 3 Dothraki dead, a Lyseni merchant found poisoned in his bed. Daenerys walked the ruins herself, Cirith hissing at her side, and found a token in the ash. A coin stamped with a faceless man's image. It was Jorah who spoke the fear aloud. "They will not attack openly now. They will strike from shadows, turn your people against each other. The world fears dragons, but it is knives in the dark that bring down empires." Daenerys nodded. "Then, we will answer with light." She called for her council, her captains, the children of fire. She sent the dragons soaring over every quarter, their eyes sharp for any hint of trouble. She gave the order for every street to be lit with glass lanterns. Every shadow watched, every stranger questioned, not with cruelty, but with vigilance. Nyra and her magisters cast spells of warding and truth over the palace and the council chambers, weaving protections that even the faceless men could not easily slip. But Daenerys did not stop at defense. She declared a festival. 3 days of light and fire, open to all. At night, the dragons danced in the sky, their flames painting the city in shifting color. By day, games and feasts filled every square. Merchants gave gifts, musicians played in every language, and children paraded the new hatchlings through the streets. The festival drew all Valyria together. Suspicion faded beneath laughter and flame. The plots of the enemy wilted in the light of the city's joy. Daenerys stood at the heart of it, her dragons around her, her people before her, and for the first time, she felt the Empire's soul. Fierce, resilient, unbreakable. But peace could never last. On the last night of the festival, As fire bloomed on every tower and the crowd sang songs of freedom, a shadow flickered at the edge of the square. A hooded figure moved swiftly through the revelers, blade gleaming. Sereth saw first. He leapt with a roar, blue fire crackling from his jaws. The crowd scattered, guards shouting. Daenerys turned, saw the assassin lunge. Time slowed. Sereth's flame caught the assassin full in the chest, burning away cloak and mask. Beneath was a face Daenerys recognized, a magister's son from Myr, sent to Valyria as a guest. The coin of the faceless men tumbled from his hand as he died, and in the hush that followed, Daenerys saw the fear on her council's faces. They were not safe. They never would be. She gathered the people to her and spoke with a voice that had carried armies and calmed dragons. We are hunted because we are free, because we have built something new. But Valyria will not bow to shadows. We answered darkness with fire. We answered death with life. Let the world know we are not afraid. Nenawan. The next morning, she sent envoys to every city, warnings written in Valyrian, Common, and the tongues of the free cities. No more spies, no more assassins. Valyria would respond to violence in kind, and any city that harbored the faceless men would be considered an enemy. Trade slowed but did not stop. The great houses of Westeros sent new embassies, cautious but respectful. The free cities plotted but none dared send armies. The Iron Bank held its hand, wary now of Valyria's resolve. The world waited, fearful, curious, watching, and Daenerys kept building. The city grew richer, more beautiful. The new dragons grew strong, learning to hunt and fly, their wings shining in the dawn. In the palace, Nyra uncovered new scrolls. Tales of lands beyond the Jade Sea, of ancient trade with Ashai and Leng, of secrets hidden in the bones of the world. Daenerys listened, planned, dreamed. Her empire was not yet finished. One dusk, as she watched her children play above the towers, Nyra stood beside her and said, "They will come again, my queen, with ships and gold, with swords and spells. Will you rule by fire alone?" Daenerys put her arm around the girl, watched Sereth soar and dive, his cry ringing across the bay. "No, Nyra. By fire, by wisdom, by hope, and by the love of my people. We are Valyria, and the world is ours to shape, not to destroy, but to awaken." And so, as the stars rose and the new city burned with 1,000 lights, Daenerys promised herself that the dream would endure. Her dragons would fly not only for conquest, but for wonder. Her empire would be a beacon, a warning, and an invitation. A new beginning for a world that had almost forgotten how to hope. And all the while, Valyria stood unbroken, its towers singing with the light of 5 dragons, its queen forever watching, forever forging the dawn. Night spread its indigo wings across Valyria and the distant lands. But sleep did not come easily to the queen or her city. The festival fires faded and the crowds retreated. Yet Daenerys remained upon the palace's highest balcony, gazing east where clouds gathered over the smoking sea. The dragons, restless after their display, circled the towers, 5 shadows that painted flame across the sky, their cries echoing off shattered domes and new spires alike. She stood with Nyra and Jorah, the silence between them broken only by the distant roar of Rhaegal. For a time, Daenerys said nothing, letting the salt wind play with her hair. Nyra leaned on the balustrade, eyes bright with thought. Jorah, cloak wrapped tight, waited with the patience of one who had seen many dawns. "The faceless men will not stop," Daenerys said at last, voice low and certain. "Nor the Triarchs, nor the old kings of Westeros who watch and scheme." Jorah's face darkened. "They will come again, Khaleesi. Not with open armies, perhaps, but with poison, shadows, traitors." Nyra looked to the queen. "We can find them. My mages have scried faces in the mist, men who serve Lys and Tyrosh, men with no names. Let us hunt them, root them out." Daenerys shook her head. "We cannot become them. Valyria will not be ruled by fear and vengeance." She turned to Nyra. What of the old spells? Those that shielded the city before the doom? Nyra hesitated. There are enchantments, blood and fire, bound to stone. They would make the city hard to enter. Harder still for magic to pierce. But they require sacrifice, as all great magic does. Ben no wonder. Jorah bristled, but Daenerys was undeterred. Tell me. In the days before the doom, Nyra explained, the Dragon Lords bound their hearts to Valyria with oaths, with blood spilled freely, not by violence, but by love, by will. If you are willing, if you're willing, if your people are willing, we could lay such wards again. Daenerys closed her eyes and felt the city's pulse in her veins, old and new. I will do it, she said. Gather who you need. The heart of Valyria will not fail. So it was that on the first day of the new moon, Daenerys summoned all who would come, her council, the magisters, the children of fire, freedmen, Dothraki merchants from Old Town and Astapor, artisans and orphans, the broken and the bold. They filled the palace square, their voices rising in 100 tongues as the dawn broke. Nyra and her circle of mages set out bowls of black glass, each filled with water from the city's aqueducts. The dragons perched atop the palace roof, scales glittering in the cold light. Daenerys stood before the crowd, her white cloak flaring behind her, her face both fierce and gentle. We have known fear, she said, her voice ringing over the crowd. We have known loss and betrayal. But here together we have made something greater. New life, new hope. Let us bind our hearts to this city, not in chains but in promise. She drew a dagger of dragon glass, ancient, carved with runes found in the deepest vaults. With a steady hand, she cut her palm and let her blood fall into the largest bowl. The crimson swirled bright against the obsidian. One by one, others followed. Jorah, grizzled and stoic. Nyra, lips murmuring spells. Ricardo, fierce and proud. Freedmen and Dothraki, artisans and merchants, children and elders. Each added a drop of blood to the bowls. Some shy, some bold, some weeping with gratitude or fear. Nyra and the magisters raised their hands, chanting in the old tongue. The dragons raised their voices, a thunder that shook the city to its core. Blue flame danced across the stones, running in veins through the city's heart, winding around every wall and tower. Light burst from the fountains, shimmered in the aqueducts, glowed in the very eyes of the people. For a long, breathless moment, all Valyria was united. Blood, fire, hope. As the last chant faded, Daenerys felt the city change. The walls hummed with new life. The shadows thinned, banished by a light that was not only fire, but memory, loyalty, belonging. She turned to the crowd, her palm bleeding freely, and saw in their eyes a wonder that was stronger than fear. We are bound now, she said. No shadow shall pass these walls unseen. No enemy shall breach us unchallenged. Valyria is our heart, and it beats with all our blood. The cheers rose, fierce and wild, and the dragons screamed their defiance to the distant sky. All through that day and the night that followed, the city glowed with a strange living light, and those who watched from the smoking sea or the hills beyond knew that something new had taken root. In the weeks that followed, the spell held. Spies and assassins tried to slip into the city, but each time they passed the gates, their presence was revealed. Shadows shifting, lanterns flaring, the children of fire at their heels. Daenerys forgave those who came to trade or seek refuge, but those who came with knives and poison found only fire and justice. The city's defenses became legend. A city where no lie could last, where darkness was unwelcome. As the city's safety grew, so did its promise. Ships from the Jade Sea arrived, bearing spices and gold, jade and silk. The warlocks of Qarth sent cautious envoys, offering knowledge and seeking trade. Even the merchants of Braavos, ever wary, sent letters requesting safe passage. Daenerys opened the city to all who came in peace and sent envoys of her own, gifted magisters and dragonsworn, children of the old blood and the new. They carried news of Valyria's rebirth and carried hope to every land. But not all was peace. Rumors reached her of an alliance forming in Westeros, lords of the Reach and Stormlands, the Ironborn, and some in Dorne. They met in secret, whispering of dragons and dooms. The Iron Bank stoked their fears, offering loans for ships and mercenaries. War, it seemed, was never far. One day, as Daenerys walked the new gardens with Rakaro and Nyra, a raven came from Dorne. The letter was short and written in a fine, slanted hand. The world is watching. Choose your friends well. Not all enemies are distant. Arianne Martell. Daenerys smiled, thinking of the proud Dornish princess and her unyielding will. She called for the council and laid out her plans. We will not provoke, she said, but we will be ready. Rakaro. The new legions are drilled not only for siege, but for open field. Yora, strengthen our watch along the coast. Nyra, continue your studies. Let no magic pass into the city without your blessing. We are not only a city, we are a beacon. Let our light shine. Then, as the city busied itself with preparation, Daenerys' thoughts turned to the greater world. She recalled the prophecy Nyra had uncovered. 5 dragons and a queen to unite the world, not by conquest alone, but by wonder. She ordered the construction of a vast library and school, open to all who wished to learn. Freedman and noble, foreigner and citizen. Scrolls and books poured in from every land, brought by merchants, scholars, and even the odd maester fleeing the restrictions of the citadel. Children learned not only letters and sums, but the history of magic, the language of dragons, the stories of every land that sent envoys. In the palace, Daenerys called for healers, wise women, and alchemists. She encouraged them to work together, mixing old Valyrian remedies with the knowledge of Korth, the healing songs of the Summer Isles, the mountain herbs of the Dothraki. New medicines were discovered, old wounds healed, and soon Valyria's reputation as a city of learning and health spread as far as its power. Still, danger drew closer. The Ironborn struck at trading ships, stealing cargo and burning sails. In the east, Les hired mercenaries to seize an outpost, only to find the new legions waiting. In the north, a shadow crept over the wintry lands beyond the wall, though none could say what it meant. Daenerys met each challenge with resolve. She sent Rhaegal and Viserion to patrol the coasts, their presence a terror to pirates. She dispatched envoys to Dorne and the Reach, offering alliance against the threat from the Iron Bank and the Triarchs. She welcomed those who fled war and hunger, and gave them purpose in the city's work. But it was the dragons who truly changed the world. Drogon, vast and scarred, flew farther each season, sometimes vanishing for days, only to return with stories told in scratches and half-burned tokens. Sereth and Nissaros, ever curious, explored the ruins beyond the city, finding relics and strange stone markers, evidence of civilizations lost even before Valyria's rise. The new clutch of dragons, growing fast, became a symbol for all Valyria. Each was named for a river or mountain, a memory of a land left behind. They learned to hunt in the air, to bring food to the city, to play with children in the squares, careful not to frighten. One morning, as the city awoke to a sky streaked with pink and gold, Daenerys gathered her council in the new library's great hall. She wore simple blue, her hair unadorned, her eyes brighter than any crown. It is time to look beyond, she said. We have defended our home, but our true purpose is not only survival. The world is sick with old wounds, war, greed, mistrust. Let Valyria be a healer as well as a fortress. Yora bowed his head. And if the world refuses healing, Daenerys smiled, a flash of the old fire. Then we endure, but I will not let fear make us tyrants. We will be strong and kind and wise. Nyra spoke then, her voice soft but unshaken. There are those who will come, not for peace, but for conquest. The old powers will not rest. Daenerys nodded. Then let us show them something new. A city that stands, not because of fear, but because of hope. A queen who is strong, but not cruel. A people who remember, but also dream. So Valyria turned outward. Envoys traveled to every free city, to Westeros, even as far as the Summer Isles and Yeti, bearing gifts of learning and peace. Dragons flew with them, symbols of power, yes, but also of wonder and promise. Some cities closed their gates in fear. Others opened them, drawn by curiosity, by trade, by hope. And always, beneath it all, the city grew. Towers rose, gardens bloomed, and children sang songs in the shadow of dragons. There was fear, but there was also joy. A fierce, enduring joy that could not be dimmed by shadow or threat. As the seasons turned and war loomed, Daenerys stood upon her balcony, the dragons circling in the evening light. Her people gathered below, their faces lifted in hope and courage. She felt the weight of the world, the burden of power, the price of peace, and knew she would bear it gladly. For she was not only the mother of dragons, she was the heart of a new Valyria, a queen of fire and wisdom. And her city would shape the world, not with conquest alone, but with the unbreakable light of hope. And as night fell, and the fires burned bright on every tower, Daenerys whispered a vow to the stars, that whatever storms came, whatever shadows crept across the world, she and her dragons would meet them together, as the dawn of a new age rose over Valyria, unbroken and eternal. Aika. In the sultry hush before dawn, Daenerys woke to the sound of rain striking the glass roof above her bed, soft at first, then swelling until it filled every chamber of the palace with its ceaseless drumming. She lay still for a time, breathing the scent of wet stone, half dreaming as memories of old storms in Korth and Astapor mingled with visions of dragons above a blazing city. When she rose, the dragons were waiting. Drogon already perched on the eaves, Rhaegal and Viserion stalking the empty halls, Sereth and Nysaros twining along the garden wall, their scales silvered by the early light. She dressed without hurry, listening as the city awoke. Rain pattered on the stones outside, voices murmured in the new markets, counselors gathered in the East Hall. Nyra's bell called magisters to the library. Each sound was familiar, grounding, yet heavy with tension. For days, news had come, messengers from the free cities, from Dorne, even from far Old Town, all bearing the same uncertain tidings. Armies on the move, alliances shifting, gold and steel pooling at borders. Daenerys felt the weight of it with every breath. The peace she'd built was holding, but only just. Like glass, she thought. Strong, beautiful, yet always in danger of shattering beneath the wrong hand. She strode through the palace, her bare feet silent on the shining floor, and found her council waiting in the glass-walled audience chamber. Rain washed the world in pale gold beyond, rivers streaming down, blurring the towers into watercolor shapes. Jorah was there, armor buckled over his traveling cloak. Nyra sat with a new book spread open, lips moving over some half-forgotten incantation. Rakaro stood tall in a cloak of dragonhide, and behind him gathered a dozen of the children of fire, scarred, proud, their faces marked by loyalty and loss. Daenerys took her place at the head of the table, and all eyes turned to her. "Report," she said. Jorah spoke first, his voice as rough as the north. "Ships from Lys and Tyrosh are massing in the summer sea. Volantis offers gold to any captain willing to strike at our trading ships. Braavos will not say where it stands, but the Iron Bank tightens its grip on our creditors in Old Town and Korth. In Westeros, the Reach and Dorne arm for war. The King's Council in King's Landing debates, but does not yet move." "Benderol." Nyra glanced up, eyes flashing. "Our spells hold. No assassin enters the city unmarked. Still, unrest festers at the edges. Old grudges, old wounds. Some speak of going back to the old ways, of raising walls and closing our gates. We will not be a city of shadows," Daenerys said, voice soft but steely. "Let the world come. We will meet them with open hands and open eyes, but we will not yield." The council turned to Ricardo, who nodded. "The new legions are ready. The children of fire patrol day and night. The Dothraki train the freedmen to ride and shoot. Every gate is watched, every tower manned. If war comes, we will stand. And now." For a moment, silence hung heavy. The rain pounded harder, as if the world itself wished to drown out the council's resolve. But Daenerys sat taller, her eyes distant. "Let them come," she said again, as if reassuring herself. "But we will not give them war. Not if we can give them wonder." She rose from the table and crossed to the eastern balcony, pushing the doors wide. The city sprawled before her, streets glistening with rain, towers shrouded in mist. The 5 dragons silhouetted on the rooftops, watching her always. She felt the city's pulse, the beat of 100,000 hearts, the hope and fear that bound them to her. The council followed her out, Nira bringing the book, Ricardo silent as stone, Jorah's hand always at his sword. "We have lived through fire and storm," Daenerys said. "We have built this city from ash and memory. If the world sends us swords, we answer with justice. If they send us fear, we answer with hope. Today, we will open our gates, not close them. Let the world see what Valyria has become." Nenderwancho. A murmur rose behind her. Some counselors shifted, uneasy. But Jorah nodded, and Ricardo gave a rare smile. Nyra closed her book and took Daenerys' hand. So it was that, before noon, Daenerys stood in the rain-washed square before the palace, the dragons arrayed behind her, and ordered the gates thrown wide. Messengers hurried through the city, banners unfurled above every gate, heralds in every tongue proclaiming a day of festival, a day of peace. Let traders come from Lys. Let merchants arrive from Old Town and Volantis. Let scholars walk from Korth and Ashai. No arms within the walls, no violence, only the sharing of stories, food and knowledge. She moved among the people, Sereth trailing her, Nissaros gliding overhead. She listened to disputes over market stalls, settled arguments with a quiet word or a gentle touch. Children ran beside her, clutching scraps of bread, their laughter ringing. She greeted Lyseni merchants who bowed too deeply, Tyroshi captains who watched the dragons with haunted eyes, and old Volantine magisters who marveled at the magic in the stones. Inside the city, music blossomed. Lutes and flutes from Lys, the high singing of summer islanders, the deep drums of Dothraki riders. At sunset, a delegation from Old Town approached the palace gates, led by a woman in maester's gray. "We come for peace, your grace," the woman said, her chain gleaming with links of gold and silver. "We bring books for your library, histories, songs, old records of the doom." Daenerys welcomed her, leading her through halls lined with glass and dragonbone. She shared stories over a simple meal, and the woman spoke of storms in Westeros, of a king troubled by dreams, of a realm unsure of its own heart. In the night, the festival reached its height. Lanterns burned in every square, casting rainbows on the wet stones. Dragons soared overhead, their shadows vast and wild. Nyra conjured blue fire that danced above the fountains, and children gasped in wonder. Even the most hardened traders found themselves smiling, drawn into the city's joy. For a time the world's troubles seemed distant. The rain eased, and the city gleamed, as if made of stars. Daenerys watched from the highest tower, Nira at her side, Jorah and Ricardo speaking quietly below. She felt the old ache, the longing for the brother she had lost, the love denied her by a world that had never been kind. But here, she thought, she had made something lasting. She slept little that night, haunted by half-dreams of war and peace. At dawn, a rider from Dorne brought news. Ships from Lys and Tyrosh had gathered off the coast, sails black as storm clouds, warriors sharpening swords. The council met before sunrise. Jorah's face was grim. "They will come with steel and fire," he warned. "We must strike first or risk being penned in our walls." Nyra spoke quietly. "There are spells, old, dangerous, if we must defend the city. But they will cost us. Each one drains the city's heart. Daenerys listened, her mind turning over the problem like a jewel. She saw the city as it was, children laughing, dragons playing, strangers dining together in the shadow of towers that had once been ruins. She saw, too, what could be lost. The light, the hope, the new world she had begun. She made her choice. "We will not strike first," she said. "Let the world see our strength, not our fear. Let them come to our gates and find not armies, but children learning, gardens blooming, music in every street. If they attack, we will answer. But until that day, Valyria stands for peace." She ordered Ricardo to ride the walls, to let the enemy see dragons circling, archers watching, legions ready. She sent Nyra to the library, to prepare what spells she could if the worst came. She kept Jorah close, trusting his counsel. The days that followed were tense. From the walls, Daenerys watched enemy ships gather, black sails and banners snapping in the salt wind. Spies slipped into the city but were caught before they could reach the heart. Some, shown the city's wonders and fed at her table, renounced their missions and begged to stay. Others vanished, leaving only coins or daggers as proof of their purpose. One dusk, as rain clouds parted and the sky burned red, the enemy fleet advanced. Lyseni triremes, Tyroshi war galleys, merchant cogs pressed into service. Fireships led the way, their decks stacked with barrels of pitch. Daenerys ascended the tallest tower, the dragons at her side, her council gathered below. She watched as the fleet drew close, their catapults ready, warriors shouting across the waves. She raised her hand, and Drogon soared into the sky, his roar splitting the world. The other dragons followed, wings blotting out the sun. The defenders on the walls loosed no arrow, cast no stone. They watched as the dragons circled, fire glinting in their eyes. At Daenerys' signal, Drogon dove, not on the fleet, but upon the water before it. His flame boiled the sea, sending up a wall of steam that swallowed ships and men alike. Rhaegal and Viserion circled the edges, their fire forming a barrier none dared cross. Sereth and Nysaros swept low, blue fire flickering in warning. Within moments, the fleet wavered. The lead ships broke, crews leaping overboard, captains shouting retreat. Flames licked the masts and sails, but no dragonfire touched a hull. The ships drifted apart, some sinking, some limping back to sea. On the walls, Daenerys spoke through a horn, her voice carried by magic and wind. "Turn back. Valyria welcomes peace, not conquest. Come in friendship, and you will be honored. Come in war, and you will find only your own fear." Then, the fleet scattered, and not a single arrow was loosed from the walls. In the days that followed, word spread through the free cities and across the narrow sea. Valyria's dragons could burn armies, but chose mercy. For weeks, the city held its breath. Then, one by one, not with warriors, but with gifts. Spices from Korth, gold from Lys, even a great white mare from the Dothraki Sea. The council met and rejoiced, and Daenerys walked the streets in peace. But she did not let her guard slip. She kept the dragons close, the legions ready. Nyra's spells ringed the city. Jorah watched the seas, and Ricardo kept the peace within. In the library, Daenerys began a chronicle, a record of the city's rebirth. The new laws, the names of the brave and the loyal, the stories of each child born beneath dragon wings. She wrote for hours each day, her words a gift for the future. And as the seasons turned, Valyria flourished. Gardens spread over old bones, towers reached for the clouds. The song of dragons became the city's heartbeat. Children of 100 lands called it home, and every night, Daenerys stood atop the palace, her eyes on the horizon, her heart full of hope and resolve. No army could conquer such a city, no darkness swallow its light. Valyria had been reborn in blood and fire, but it endured by the will of a queen who had chosen mercy, and by the hope of a people who refused to kneel to the old world's fear. As dawn broke and the dragons soared into the new day, Daenerys watched them and smiled. The world would change, and she would meet it, unbroken, forever at the heart of the empire she had built from ash, memory, and the dream of something better. Oh, Gan? The stars hung sharp and cold above the city, their reflections shimmering in the rain-dappled stones of Valyria's new streets. Across the towers, flames guttered in dragon-shaped lanterns, their glow curling around the glass arches and marble domes that marked the city's slow, inexorable resurrection. From her balcony atop the palace, Daenerys Targaryen gazed out upon the city that was both her inheritance and her creation. The night wind tugged at her hair, carrying with it the distant laughter of children, the slow beat of drums in the old market, and faint but unmistakable, the hiss of dragons settling for the night. In the hush that followed the city's victory and restraint, Valyria breathed in peace as if the old world dared not disturb it. But Daenerys had learned, in the bitter courts of Qarth and the chaos of Slaver's Bay, that peace was never a gift. It was a harvest, sown in sweat, watered by blood, and always at risk from blight. Below her, the city's wards glowed with Nyra's blue fire, spiraling in thin lines through the stones. Nyra herself was deep within the library, seeking ever older knowledge, wards' histories, forgotten arts that might protect Valyria from a world which, though cowed for now, would one day try again. Daenerys' council too worked late. Yora met with captains and merchants in the torchlit halls, discussing trade and defense in low voices. Rakaro and his Dothraki blood riders patrolled the city's edge, watching for smugglers or would-be spies. The children of fire gathered in the shadow of the temple, keeping their silent vigil. She turned away from the balcony and walked through her private chambers, trailed by the faint heat of Drogon's passage. Her eldest dragon slept near the hearth, his breath misting in the air, red eyes half-lidded. Sereth and Nissaros had curled together on the colonnade, their scales shimmering silver and blue. Rhaegal and Viserion, restless as the moon, prowled the rooftops. The younger dragons, a riot of colors, their wings small and their fire clumsy, nested in the warm garden sand below. Sleep would not come, not with the city so alive and her mind so full. She crossed the palace to the library, where Nyra sat surrounded by tomes, candles guttering low. "Still at work?" Daenerys asked gently. Nyra's eyes flashed in the candlelight. "There are letters from Braavos, Your Grace, and more from Old Town. They beg us to send scholars. There are those who wish to learn from us, not simply fear the dragons." Daenerys smiled. "Let them come. If knowledge can cross the sea, perhaps trust can follow." "Nash. They also write of unrest," Nyra said. "Of lords in Westeros who gather in secret, of whispers from Volantis and Lys. The peace we have bought is thin as glass, and the world does not forget old wounds." Daenerys considered. "Nor do we. But every day we hold, every child who learns, every merchant who dares to trade is another stone in our foundation." She sat beside Nyra, reading the letters by the uncertain light. There were warnings, rumors of sellswords gathering in Tyrosh, word of new ships in the Stepstones, mutterings of magic in Qarth. Yet there were also requests for alliance, for trade, for healers and teachers. The world, Daenerys saw, was beginning to shift, a slow, uncertain movement away from the fear that had long bound it. She spent the night writing answers, firm but open, invitations to those who wished to visit, cautions to those who would undermine her peace. She sent Nyra to rest at last, her mind alive with plans for lessons and embassies, new wards and schools. When the city's bells tolled for dawn, Daenerys was still awake, her heart steady. That morning, a ship arrived from the Summer Isles, its sails painted with bright birds. The queen received the captain in the great hall, surrounded by counselors, dragons slumbering in the sun. The man knelt, presenting silk and rare fruit, and told of storms in the south, of pirates beaten back by rumor of dragons, of islands whose people sang Daenerys' name. In return, he asked for healers, for glass, for trade. Daenerys welcomed him and promised both aid and alliance. She saw the light in his eyes, the mingled hope and awe she had come to recognize in those who first saw Valyria's wonders. Afterward, she walked the city with Nyra and Jorah, stopping to speak with stonemasons repairing a broken dome, children splashing in a fountain, a listening scribe translating Valerian epics. In the city's heart, the old market was alive with color. Dothraki horsemen traded with Westerosi merchants. Summer Islanders bargained with Volantines, and everywhere the sound of tongues mingled. None dominant, all vital. The queen moved among them, her presence a quiet reassurance. She paused at a stall where a freedwoman from Astapor displayed jewelry of obsidian and gold. The woman bowed, but Daenerys lifted her gently. "How fares your family?" she asked. "They thrive, your grace," the woman said. "My youngest learns to write, my eldest trains in the city watch. We are safe, we are home." Daenerys smiled and purchased a ring, slipping it onto her finger as she walked on. Each face in the crowd was a victory, each voice in the market a note in the city's new song. Yet beneath it all, the tension lingered. That evening, Rakaro returned from his patrol with grim news. 2 ships, Lyseni by the look of them, had been found burned and empty on the rocks. On the decks, traces of strange fire. No dragons, but something older, more bitter. Yora's brow furrowed as he studied the report. Sabotage, or a warning. They would rather lose their own ships than let us claim them. Daenerys summoned her council. "Let us not answer in kind. Let the world see that we are not like the old empire, quick to wrath and slow to forgive. We will find those responsible, but we will not start another war." In the following days, she doubled the city's patrols and called for healers to tend the few survivors. She opened the harbors to Summer Islanders and those from the Jade Sea, sending messages to the free cities that all were welcome, so long as they came in peace. Slowly, suspicion ebbed. The burned ships became another story, one more tale in a city alive with legends. Markets thrived, gardens bloomed, and the city's walls gleamed with the living light of Nyra's words. Then, on a day as bright as any spring, a delegation arrived from Westeros. It was led by a woman with the coloring of the Reach, green eyes, hair like spun gold, and a knight in black and gold, whose tabard bore the sigil of House Tyrell. They came bearing olive branches and a single white rose. In the audience hall, beneath the gaze of 5 dragons and 1,000 eyes, Daenerys welcomed them. "My queen," said the woman, her voice cool but earnest, "we come not for war but to learn. The Reach remembers fire, but also wisdom. Will you teach us?" Daenerys studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "We will learn together. Valyria has much to teach, but more to gain from friendship. Let us share not only trade, but knowledge and peace." That night, feasts were held in every square. The Tyrell Knight shared stories with Dothraki riders. The Reach woman traded recipes with Lyseni cooks. Maesters and magisters pored over books side by side. In the sky, the dragons danced, flames painting the city in banners of gold and red and blue. Through all of it, Daenerys moved quietly, listening, watching, always weighing hope against danger. She knew that every alliance was a risk, every friendship a test. But she also saw, with each passing day, that the city was growing stronger, not just by fire and sword, but by the weaving of new lives, new dreams. Weeks became months, and the world shifted. The threat of open war faded, replaced by cautious negotiation, by treaties written in the Great Library, by envoys who came to see what had once been unthinkable. Valyria as more than a ruin, more than a threat, but not all shadows were banished. Nyra uncovered rumors of sorcery in the ruins of Illyria, whispers of a cabal who sought to raise shadows against Valyria. Rakaro's riders found strange tracks in the ashfields beyond the city, giant prints, like those of wyverns or some older beast. Jorah worried over the slow increase in pirates on the summer sea, the trickle of sellswords gathering in the stepstones. "They will test us again, Khaleesi," he warned. "They always do." Daenerys nodded. "Then let them find us ready, not with rage, but with resolve." She commissioned new ships, fitted with the lessons learned from Dragonfire and old Valyrian craft. She sent envoys to Qarth, to Asshai, even to the far north, seeking knowledge of the old magics and the secrets of peace. She watched the dragons grow and train, their flight now a daily spectacle, their fire an ever-present promise of safety. And always she listened to the songs of her people, to the hopes of the council, to the wisdom in the old books Nyra brought her each night. She walked the city often, alone, or with a single dragon, listening to the heartbeat of Valyria as if it were her own. On a moonless night, as rain returned to sweep the city clean, Daenerys dreamed of fire again. Not the fire of war, but of creation, of a world remade by courage and mercy. She saw Valyria shining, its towers rising over lands at peace, its children flying with dragons in skies free of fear. She woke before dawn and wrote a letter to every lord and prince and merchant prince who had ever threatened her city. Come and see. The world is changing. You may join us or not, but Valyria will never close its gates to hope. She signed it with her own hand, Daenerys Stormborn, Queen of Dragons, Empress of New Valyria, and sent it forth by the wings of her dragons, by the hands of her loyal, and by the dreams of all who believed the world could be remade. And as the first light crept over the towers, as the dragons lifted into the sky and the city woke beneath them, Daenerys knew that whatever storm came next, Valyria would meet it, not with terror, but with the light of all they had built, and the hope that would never be conquered. Okay. Unusual activity has been detected from your device. Try again later. 9440 C. 35 Conenseed 7. 32 by name. Ka. Dawn broke blue and fierce over Valyria, the sky swept clean by the last of the spring rains. Sunlight streamed between the glass towers, catching in the banners that draped the city's gates, dancing in the rivulets that traced the stones. The new Valyria was waking to a world that had begun, slowly, to believe in the impossible. That an empire lost to fire and ruin might rise not as conqueror, but as hope. Daenerys Targaryen stood in her garden, breathing the salt wet air. The white flowers of the riverbank had bloomed in the night, filling the palace grounds with their sharp, wild perfume. Beyond the walls, the city rumbled awake. Street vendors called out their wares in a dozen tongues. Magisters argued in the squares. Dothraki boys raced through the markets with dragon egg marbles clacking in their hands. In every quarter, people prepared for the day's work, and whatever news the sea or sky might bring. Drogon perched on the sun-warmed roof above, huge wings tucked close, watching his mother with a lazy red eye. The other dragons were elsewhere. Sereth and Nissaros hunting above the river. Rhaegal and Viserion sunning on the broken bridge that arched toward the sea. The younger dragons, nearly grown now, ranged far and wide, sometimes vanishing for days. Each return, each new clutch of eggs, was cause for celebration. Daenerys knelt beside a patch of wildflowers, pressing her fingers to the damp earth. She felt the city's heartbeat in the ground, the life she had rekindled, the dreams taking root. For a moment she closed her eyes, letting the sounds of the city wash over her. The laughter, the market bells, the distant roar of a dragon. Peace, yes. But it was not peace that made her linger. It was vigilance, the knowledge that nothing this fragile, this precious, could endure unguarded. She stood, brushed the dirt from her hands, and walked the winding garden path back to the palace. Nyra was waiting in the outer hall, hair caught up in blue silk, her face half lit by the morning sun. "Another raven from Westeros," Nyra said, offering a scroll. "This one from White Harbor." Daenerys took it, scanning the neat, careful hand of Lord Manderley. He spoke of ice melting on the northern rivers, of a fair wind rising, of trade that had doubled since the new year. He wished peace for his city, and asked again if she would send a healer, a request Daenerys had granted already, twice over. She nodded to Nyra. "Send him our thanks. Promise another healer and 3 shipwrights. Manderley will remember kindness longer than any sword." Nyra smiled, tucking the letter away. "There is also word from Qarth. The 13 invite you to a gathering. Some say to marvel at what you've made. Others whisper of an alliance." Daenerys' eyes narrowed. "Qarth loves its secrets, but we have nothing to hide. I'll send envoys, Rakaro and 2 dragons." "Not Drogon," Nyra said, sly. They still wake screaming at the memory of him. Not Drogon, Daenerys agreed, with a rare smile. Sereth and Viserion, then. She moved through the palace, its halls bright with dragon glass and sunlight, toward the council chamber. Jorah stood at the window, speaking in low tones with a merchant from Old Town. Rakharo bent over a map with 3 captains of the new legions, his finger tracing the coasts from Lys to the Jade Gates. The Children of Fire clustered at the far end of the table, their leader, a girl no older than 16, reporting in a clear voice about patrols along the aqueducts and the state of the city's watch. Daenerys listened to each in turn. She questioned, encouraged, corrected, praised. No decision was made without her touch. The council's business was brisk. Grain shipments, repairs to the harbor wall, an apprentice found dead in the Temple District. A quarrel between rival glassmakers. At noon, the Summer Islander ambassador arrived, with news of pirate raids broken up by Valyrian patrols, and brought a chest of sapphires as thanks. Daenerys accepted the gift, promising a new fleet would help keep the summer sea safe. The ambassador marveled at the dragons as they circled the palace. He lingered, hoping for a word alone. When the council broke, Daenerys led him to the terrace. Together, they watched the city below, smoke rising from a dozen bakeries, children playing in the shadow of the old palace, dragons swooping through the air. "Your city grows more wondrous by the season," the ambassador said. "But the world is wary. Some see only power, not peace." Daenerys nodded. "They will see more in time, or they will find themselves left behind. Some whisper of alliances. Lys, Tyrosh, perhaps even Westeros itself. Are you not afraid?" "I am always afraid," Daenerys said softly. "But I have learned to make my fear serve me. We are not like the old Valyria. We do not rule by terror, but by promise. Let them come and see." He bowed, satisfied, and took his leave. Afterward, Daenerys walked the walls, dragons gliding far overhead. She watched as Sereth and Nysaros returned from the hunt, their talons full of river trout, their scales dappled with water. She stopped at the fish market, laughing as the dragons dropped their catch for the eager cooks, who bowed low before returning to their work. It was here, in the everyday bustle, that Daenerys felt most at home. She visited the forges, where glassmakers shaped vials and ornaments for the city's healers. The gardens, where children recited their lessons beside dragon eggs warming in the sun. The library, where scholars from Yeti and Old Town argued about ancient scrolls in a tangle of languages. Each place she went, she listened. She heard praise, but also complaint, about a shortage of saffron, about the cost of bread, about the wildness of the youngest dragons, who sometimes shattered windows with their playful dives. She answered each as she could, promising patience, wisdom, reform. She wrote names in her private ledger. Those who deserved reward, those who needed counsel, those who might cause trouble. Late in the day, she returned to the palace to find Nyra waiting. Her face drawn. "There is trouble in the east," Nyra said. "A city, Selhorys, has closed its gates to our merchants. They fear our dragons, they say, but truly it is their own magisters, jealous and afraid." Daenerys thought for a moment. "Send word to Selhorys. I offer friendship, not threat. If they wish to visit, let them come and see for themselves. If not, we do not force their hand." Nyra hesitated. "Some among your council urge you to act, to send dragons, to remind them of your strength. I will not be goaded into war by wounded pride," Daenerys replied, her voice iron. "There is another way." She drafted a letter to the magisters of Selhorys, offering safe passage for any who wished to learn, promising that dragons would not set foot in their lands unless invited. She sent Rakharo to oversee the border, and dispatched healers and teachers to the villages beyond the city walls. She trusted that patience, not fire, would win the day. As night fell, Daenerys dined with her council in the great hall, the glass lanterns casting shifting patterns over food and faces. She spoke little, listening to Rakharo's tales of patrols in the hills, to Jorah's warnings about the politics of the free cities, to Nyra's dreams of schools and scholars, and a library open to all the world. Afterward, as the city slipped into darkness, Daenerys walked the palace gardens. The dragons slept scattered among the trees, their breathing gentle. She paused by a pond where moonlight glittered in the water and let herself rest, just for a moment, in the beauty of what she had wrought. But always, her mind turned to the future. The threats that simmered beyond the horizon, the alliances that needed nurturing, the restless hunger for something greater. On the eastern wind came rumors of a new sorcerer's circle in Qarth, seeking old magics to undo the dragons, of a war council gathering in lies, of mercenaries crossing from the disputed lands with coin and grudges in equal measure. Even in Westeros, there was talk of a conclave. Lords gathering at Old Town, some eager for peace, others for vengeance. Daenerys called her council the next morning, plans already forming. "We have shown the world our strength," she said. "Now we show them our heart. For every threat, we offer friendship. For every slight, we answer with patience. But if war comes, we stand together, dragon and council, freed and bloodrider, child and scholar." Jorah voiced his doubts, as he always did. But Rakaro and Nyra lent their voices to the queen's resolve. The children of fire stood ready, and even the city's merchants, hardened by years of uncertainty, pledged support. So Valyria endured. Through spring storms and summer droughts, through small betrayals and bold new beginnings, the city thrived. Ships from every corner of the world crowded the harbors. Markets bustled with trade. In the new library, the first book was penned, a chronicle of the city's rebirth. Written in 4 languages, its dedication a promise to all who dream of a world remade. In the palace garden, another clutch of dragon eggs warmed in the sun, and the children gathered daily to watch, waiting for the cracks to appear. The city's pulse was steady, its light undimmed, and Daenerys, queen, mother, empress, watched over it all, her heart never free of care, but always alive with hope. She knew the world would test her again, that old fears and jealousies would not fade easily. But she also knew that her greatest weapon was not fire, nor flight, nor even the dragons, but the vision she had made real. A city open to all, united by purpose, radiant with promise. As the moon climbed and the dragons sank to the night, Daenerys walked the palace alone, touching the stones, feeling the warmth that lived now in every wall. This was her victory, not the easy victory of conquerors, but the hard-won peace of those who dared to dream. And as she watched her city sleep beneath the watchful gaze of dragons, she made herself a vow that whatever storms might come, she would meet them with all the strength of